Today, June 9th, is a monumental day. While we've all been watching the charts, something is happening in Washington, D.C. that could be the single most important catalyst for the future of XRP. The SEC, yes, that SEC is holding a special roundtable event. And the name they've given it? DeFi and the American Spirit. Now, I know what you're thinking. Another boring government meeting. Who cares? Wrong. This isn't just a meeting. This is the direct result of the war that Ripple and the XRP community fought for years. This is the victory lap. This is where the future rulebook for crypto gets written, and XRP is at the very heart of the conversation. So today we're going to break down exactly what this event is, who's in the room, what it means for our bags, and where XRP goes from here now that the fog of war is finally clearing. This is big. So make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get straight into it. You need to understand just how massive this is. The SEC has gathered some of the biggest brains from both inside the Beltway and from the heart of the crypto revolution for a live public discussion. Now, let that sink in. This isn't happening in some dusty, forgotten basement room at SEC headquarters. This isn't a closed-door meeting where we have to wait for some heavily redacted notes to leak out 3 months later. No, this is a front and center, lights on, cameras rolling, live-streamed event. They are putting themselves on display for the whole world to see. After years of operating in the shadows with sealed documents and surprise lawsuits, they are finally being forced to have the conversation out in the open. That level of transparency from them is almost unprecedented. And the title they chose? DeFi and the American Spirit. Guys, we have to talk about the sheer weight of those words. For the last 3, 4, even 5 years, the SEC's approach to crypto felt more like the American spirit of the Spanish Inquisition. It was hostile. It was adversarial. The strategy was regulation by enforcement, a phrase that I know gives every single member of the XRP army PTSD. It was Gary Gensler standing at a podium, pointing fingers and suing first, asking questions maybe never. But this title, DeFi and the American Spirit, that flips the entire script. It's a 180-degree turn. They are now, for the first time, publicly framing crypto innovation not as a criminal enterprise to be shut down, but as a part of America's core identity. They're connecting what we do to the spirit of the pioneers who built the West, the engineers who won the space race, the entrepreneurs who sparked the internet boom. When have you ever heard the SEC use language like this before? It is a night and day shift in tone, and it's a signal so massive it's like a flashing billboard in Times Square. So who's actually at this table? This isn't just a bunch of regulators talking to themselves. You've got the top brass from the SEC, of course. We're talking commissioners, and most importantly, the one and only Hester Peirce, aka Crypto Mom. She has been our champion on the inside, a lone voice fighting for clear rules and a safe harbor for projects while everyone else was sharpening their knives. Her presence gives this whole thing legitimacy. But they're not just talking to themselves. They've invited leaders from major crypto projects, legal eagles who have been down in the trenches fighting these battles, and brilliant minds who actually understand the technology. You have builders, thinkers, and policy experts who can go toe-to-toe with any regulator on the planet. This isn't a lecture. It's a debate. It's not just the lions in the den anymore. The crypto gladiators are in the arena too, and they're there to speak truth to power. And that brings me to the whole point of this thing. The idea here is to have a real conversation, not a courtroom battle. Think about the vibe of the Ripple lawsuit. It was adversarial by design, two sides trying to destroy each other's arguments. A roundtable is designed for collaboration. For years, they were speaking different languages in a process designed for conflict. Today, they are finally trying to find a common dictionary. They're discussing what DeFi is, how it works, and this is the absolute key, how to regulate it without killing the innovation that makes it so powerful. That phrase alone is a quiet admission. It's the SEC acknowledging that their past actions were seen as innovation killers. That's a subtle but huge victory for us. And to top it all off, this event isn't a one-off. It's part of a whole series the SEC is calling its spring sprint toward crypto clarity. Clarity, that word. Say it with me. Clarity. The one thing we have been screaming for from the rooftops for years. The fact that the SEC is now using this word in their own branding is monumental. They didn't just wake up one morning and decide to be helpful. They were dragged, kicking and screaming, to this point. Our fight, the Ripple case, the XRP army's relentless pressure, it forced their hand. It showed them that their strategy of ambiguity and enforcement was unsustainable. They had to come to the table. So don't mistake this for the SEC just having a friendly chat. This is the direct result of the pressure we all applied. This is the beginning of them building an actual functional rulebook for digital assets in the United States, and it's a process that's happening right now out in the open because of the battles we've already won. Okay, so why is the talk about DeFi so critically important for XRP? Why should you, a dedicated member of the XRP army, care about a bunch of suits in DC throwing around acronyms? Because, my friends, you need to look past the surface. DeFi is just the polite, sanitized code word they're using. The real topic, the ghost that haunts this entire roundtable, the giant, multi-ton elephant in the room, is an XRP. The entire philosophical debate they are having today, every single point of contention, is the exact same fight Ripple just won. This isn't a new conversation for them. It's the public postmortem of the war they lost against us. Every question they ask is an echo of a question that was already answered in court, thanks to Ripple's legal team. Let's rewind the tape for anyone who's new here. 4 years, the SEC's one and only weapon was the Howey test. A dusty, ancient law from 1946, designed to figure out if selling shares in a Florida orange grove counted as an investment contract. I'm not kidding. They were trying to regulate 21st century digital asset technology with a legal framework written when the world's most advanced computer was the size of a building and had less power than your microwave. They took that orange grove test and tried to stretch it, twist it, and torture it to fit XRP. Their whole argument boiled down to this. You, the buyer, invested money in a common enterprise, Ripple, with the expectation of profit from their efforts. They tried to tell the world that you bought XRP for the same reason you buy a share of Apple stock. And for 3 long years, Ripple's counter-argument, and our argument, the one we screamed from the rooftops on Twitter and YouTube, has always been devastatingly simple. XRP is not a stock. It's not a piece of a company. It's a tool. It's a technology. It has utility. It's a digital pipeline for money. It's a universal translator for value, designed to be a bridge between currencies to make global payments instant and dirt cheap. You don't invest in a bridge. You use the bridge to get from point A to point B. To call it a security is to fundamentally misunderstand its entire purpose. It's like calling the internet a security because Amazon uses it to make money. It's absurd. And guess what? After millions of dollars, after years of FUD and suppressed prices, after an epic legal battle, the courts largely agreed. Judge Annalisa Torres brought the gavel down, and the sound echoed from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. That landmark ruling, that programmatic sales of XRP on exchanges are not securities, was a historic, industry-shaking victory. And now, with the SEC lawsuit finally and fully settled, the war is over. The ink is dry. So when these regulators and experts get together today to talk about DeFi, what they are really asking is the question that the XRP case forced them to confront. What do we do now? What do we do with a digital asset that has a proven real-world use case? How do we draw the line between a purely speculative asset and a utility token that powers a new financial infrastructure? How do you separate the technology from the company that champions it? These are the questions they tried to avoid for a decade, and the XRP lawsuit pinned them to the wall and forced them to find an answer. Every single talking point on their agenda today is built on the foundation that Ripple and the XRP army laid with blood, sweat, and treasure. When they talk about creating a modern framework, that's because we proved the old one was broken. When they talk about looking beyond the Howey test, that's because we showed the world how absurd it was. When they talk about fostering innovation, that's because we demonstrated how their approach was crushing it. Make no mistake, Ripple was the tip of the spear. The XRP army held the line. We were the ones who walked through the minefield first and took the arrows for the entire industry. Every other crypto project that now has a clearer path to build and innovate in the United States owes a debt of gratitude to the fight that we all endured. This roundtable isn't the start of a conversation. It's the public acknowledgement that the old way of doing things failed. They are, in effect, debating the XRP question live for the world to see and trying to build a new road forward on the very ground we cleared for them. Pop a fresh battery in your ledger, because this is the part you've been waiting for. We've talked about the politics, we've talked about the history. Now let's talk about the bottom line. What does all of this, the fancy roundtable, the shifting tone, the legal victory, actually mean for the price, for global adoption, and for the future of your investment? Let's translate the Washington, D.C. talk into real-world, portfolio-pumping impact. First up, the most immediate effect, confidence. For years, XRP has been running a race with a ball and chain shackled to its ankle. That ball and chain was regulatory uncertainty, and it was heavy. It was a wet blanket smothering the fire. It was a governor on a supercar engine, keeping it from truly opening up on the highway. Every piece of good news, every new partnership outside the U.S., was held back by the dark cloud of the SEC lawsuit. Well, what happens when you finally cut that chain? The lawsuit is settled. It's over. Done. And now, the regulator themselves, the very entity that shackled us, is shifting from attacking to talking, from suing to collaborating. This sends a powerful shockwave through the market. It's a psychological vibe shift of epic proportions. For years, the price of XRP had a secret, invisible tax baked into it. Let's call it the SEC FUD tax. Every time you bought XRP, part of its potential was being actively suppressed by fear. Today, with this roundtable, we are watching that tax being publicly repealed. And who is watching this closer than anyone? The big money players, the institutional whales. I'm talking about the hedge funds, the pension funds, the family offices, the folks who manage trillions of dollars. These guys can't afford to gamble on legal gray areas. For them, XRP was radioactive. Now, they're seeing the all-clear signal being fired. They're seeing the path being cleared not just by a court, but by the regulator's own change of heart. The water is no longer murky. It's becoming crystal clear, and the whales are getting ready to swim. Second, and this is the core of the bull case, institutional adoption. The Kraken is about to be unleashed. Think about Ripple's whole reason for being on-demand liquidity, or as I like to call it, the Swift killer. It's a financial superhighway that lets banks and payment providers move money across the globe in seconds, not days. It saves them a fortune. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the CEO of a major U.S. bank. Your tech guys have told you ODL is a game changer. Your accountants have shown you it can save your company hundreds of millions. But for the last 3 years, your team of lawyers has had a giant, glowing red, absolutely not sign on their desk. Why? Because the SEC was actively at war with the very asset that powers the network. Touching it would have been professional suicide. Today, that lawyer is watching this SEC roundtable. They're hearing U.S. government officials talk about clarity and the American spirit of innovation. They're seeing the very foundation of the SEC's old argument crumble in a public forum. That giant red and O sign? It's starting to flicker. It's turning yellow. And it is getting ready to turn bright, beautiful green. This roundtable de-risks XRP for American institutions. And let's be crystal clear about the scale here. This isn't about us retail warriors buying a few hundred or a few thousand XRP. We are the backbone, but the institutional volume is the tidal wave. This is about financial giants needing to source billions of dollars worth of XRP liquidity on a daily basis to power their payment corridors between the US, Mexico, Europe, and Asia. That isn't speculation. That is utility-driven demand, the holy grail of any asset. It's the kind of volume that doesn't just move the needle. It breaks the whole machine. Third, the ultimate catalyst, the XRP ETF. You've seen the speculation. You've heard the whispers. I'm here to tell you it's not just real. It's the next logical step on the timeline. We saw the absolute market explosion when the Bitcoin ETFs were approved. We saw the hype around the Ethereum ETFs. Now ask yourself, after the kings and queens, who is the heir apparent? Who is the one asset with proven real-world utility and, crucially, now has legal clarity in the most important financial market in the world? It's XRP. An ETF is the final floodgate. It means your parents can buy XRP in their retirement account. It means your financial advisor can put it in your 401k. It removes every single technical barrier for tens of millions of investors and trillions of dollars in passively managed capital. The only thing that was holding back an application from giants like BlackRock and Fidelity was the lawsuit. You can't offer a product based on an asset the SEC is actively trying to kill. Today's discussion, by treating digital assets as a legitimate and innovative part of the American economy, is like rolling out the red carpet for an XRP ETF application. They are building the exact regulatory foundation that a firm like BlackRock needs to confidently file the paperwork. So, in the short term, this event is a massive sentiment boost. It's vindication. It validates our long-held belief that XRP is a unique and powerful asset. It tells the entire world that XRP is not only here to stay, but it is a fully compliant, legitimate player in the future of finance. The training wheels are off. The rocket is fueled. And we are approaching the countdown. So where is XRP going from here? We've looked at the immediate impact, but I want you to zoom out with me. Forget the 4-hour chart. Think in years. Think in decades. If the brutal 3-year-long crypto winter brought on by the SEC lawsuit was the end of the war, what does peacetime truly look like? I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like growth. Unrestricted, explosive, unadulterated growth. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, Ripple can focus 100% of its energy, its resources, and its formidable war chest not on paying lawyers, but on business development. Think about that. For 3 years, a massive portion of Ripple's genius-level brainpower and hundreds of millions of dollars were diverted into a defensive war. Our legal team were heroes, absolute gladiators, but imagine what that same energy, that same focus, that same mountain of cash can do when it's finally pointed forward. When it's aimed at offense, at expansion. This means Ripple can now kick down the doors of every major bank and financial institution in North America. They can aggressively market on-demand liquidity in the United States, forging the multi-billion-dollar partnerships that were previously deemed too risky. The question in every U.S. boardroom is no longer, what about the lawsuit? The question is now, how quickly can we integrate? The shackles are off. The engine is roaring. And Ripple is ready to run at full speed. And this is where we have to remember the long-term vision. The vision that got so many of us into XRP in the first place. The goal was never just to be a top 5 crypto on CoinMarketCap. The goal has always been to become the global standard for value transfer. We're not talking about competing with other cryptos anymore. That's thinking too small. We are talking about competing with and ultimately replacing legacy systems like SWIFT. You know, SWIFT? The ancient, slow, expensive network that the entire world's banking system relies on. It's a network of horse and buggy messengers in the age of fiber optics, and it moves over $150 trillion a year. That's trillion with a capital T. XRP isn't just a slightly better option. It's a different species of technology. It's the fiber optic cable to SWIFT's carrier pigeon. And if XRP, through Ripple's ODL and other avenues, captures even a tiny single-digit percentage of that colossal market, we are talking about trillions of dollars in value needing to flow through the XRP ledger on a constant basis. This isn't speculative demand. This is pure, unadulterated, utility-driven demand. And this is where XRP now stands alone. With legal clarity in the US, XRP is no longer just another crypto. It's a regulated, compliant digital asset with a real-world use case, backed by a major enterprise-grade fintech company. It possesses what I call the golden triangle of crypto adoption. Proven technology. A ledger that is fast, cheap, scalable, and has run flawlessly for over a decade. Check. Real-world utility. A clear use case solving a multi-trillion-dollar problem used by real companies today. Check. Regulatory clarity. The final, holy grail piece of the puzzle, now clicking into place in the world's largest economy. Double check. Bitcoin has clarity but struggles with this level of utility. Ethereum has utility but faces questions on its status and scaling. XRP is now arguably the only major digital asset that has all 3 points of the triangle locked down. And that unique position is exactly what major financial institutions look for before they invest billions. So let's talk about the numbers. Let's talk about the price targets you see everywhere: $5, $10, and yes, the triple-digit hopium. For years, in the fog of the lawsuit, those numbers felt like a dream. But in a world where XRP has regulatory clarity, where it's being used by major banks, and where it's accessible to the masses through an ETF, we stop talking about hope. We start talking about math. I'm not a financial advisor, and you must do your own research. But the logic is simple. If you need to move trillions of dollars a year across a network, the individual tokens on that network must have a substantial value to facilitate those large transactions efficiently. The price becomes a function of the utility. It's not magic. It's just logistics. In this new world, those big price targets start to look less like a dream and more like a logical mathematical conclusion. Now, I have to hear from you. This is a community, and this is our moment. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many as I can.